guys, Hooked on Sunshine. It's a Sunday afternoon and I have a few things on my mind and I just want to share them with you. So first I'm going to read a post that I made today and I kind of want to get your, some of you will give me your feedback on that and I always really appreciate that. With the new SCOTUS ruling, I have been watching my friends online like devastate one another. There's that side of like, we're pro-life and, children matter. And I mean, I know people who've been like on their knees before God praying for our nation who they feel like is snuffing out the lives of thousands of children every year and really just feel like it's a part of people's salvation. Like that's how seriously they feel about that. And then I also have this other group of friends who feel really strongly about women's rights and feeling to some extent like that is more important than anything. And I probably fall somewhere in the middle. And I normally don't like to talk about politics on Hooked on Sunshine because so often, people just feel really differently than you think that they're going to feel. But ultimately, I just want to shine some light on the fact that I think we can find some common ground. And I think that in general, we need to be really cognizant of the fact that your opinion, as important as it is, there may be somebody that's coming at that circumstance from a totally different point of view. So this was my post. It says, I hear you, I see you. Be kind as people are processing through this very charged issue. And it is such a hot button for people. Remember that you do not know why they feel how they feel. And they may be unaware why you have chosen your stance as well. And that's not choosing a side. That's not saying one side is right and the other side is wrong. Be an example of love and understanding. Don't lose your friends, family over a disagreement on a political decision. And keep in mind that the SCOTUS decision was for the federal government. The states are still going to have their say-so in this. And, at that point, if you live in a state that doesn't support the way you think about certain things, and in general, I'm pretty open about the fact that I live in states that support some of the things that are important to me. And so if this is a really hot button and a really important issue for you, find those states that support what you support, or, get involved personally on legislation that will actually support the things that you support in this particular area. It says, humanize where your friends are. This will be tough, but you are the real change that is needed. It's up to all of us to love. The most heartbreaking thing to me has been to watch people that I love dearly attack one another because that other person feels very differently than they do. We've not had the same personal experiences. We've not been raised by the same parents. We don't have the same religious background. And so often we feel like, why? I don't understand. Why are they not putting the children first? Or why are they not putting women's rights first? Because they have a little different slant and a little different idea on it doesn't mean that their opinion and their value is that much different than yours. And so I just had a few thoughts. It says, I hear my friends that believe that life starts at conception. They are a group that has shed many tears for the loss of infant life, and my friends are not against women. So the misconception a lot of times of the other side is that people that are pro-life, that they don't believe in women's rights. And the truth is they just have a really serious conviction over the fact that a child's spirit starts at conception. And if that child's spirit starts at conception and we make a choice as a culture and as a nation to give people the right to kill that child, then they feel that personal responsibility of participating in that because they don't stand up and say something. So that's where they're coming from. Then it also says, I hear my friends that believe a woman's right to make choices for her body should be hers and hers alone. They are mourning this loss and they are not against infant life. So, I mean, I have tons of friends, Christian friends, Catholic friends, friends of all different races, shapes, sizes, religious preferences and backgrounds that feel very differently about a woman's right to choose. They feel very differently about birth control and things like that. But ultimately, those women, they believe very strongly in an infant's sustainability, in infant's life, in your children having the very best life. So don't make an assumption that because they are pro-choice, that they're not a believer of children and the rights of children and having children be treated with respect and dignity. I feel like there are strong points on both sides, and I'm not going to go into both sides on this because I feel like it's really important that you research for yourself what's important to you and stick with that. But this is what I want to bring about. Where we seem to fall short on it is how to understand each other and manage the current culture. And that was happening before this change. So before this change, it was still the fight back and forth and still the I'm right and you're wrong kind of conversations. If we change the current rights for women, do we also, and I basically put a list up, and I could have put this list up 6 months ago when it was, when this wasn't the decision, like so often when it was really more pro-choice, we were allowing states to do really late-term abortions and some other things that, just most people just disagreed with as far as being common sense in general. Most of us understand that trauma and, life choices and things that are happening in our lives, they put us in some really hard positions. I feel really, really lucky in my life that I've never been in a situation where I had to make that choice, which is probably one of the reasons I don't feel super strongly about it one way or another. I have friends on both sides of this aisle, both sides that really fight for their rights and what they feel is important. And I see something valuable on both sides. I don't agree actually with either side of it's all or nothing. It's kind of not how my brain thinks though. But what I do think is that every time we make a decision, especially a decision that is all encompassing, where it's like, this is the decision for this group of people, this nation. Right now it's global, and states are scrambling to make sure that they have things in place so that healthcare is taken care of, so that those kind of resources are available in those kinds of circumstances before things really, it can change a lot of things. I also know people who are really celebrating that they feel like they've, from their pro-life standpoint, have saved the lives of thousands, if not millions of children. So, I just see the sanctity of both sides. I understand why they fight for those things. But since this is potentially changing the culture, some things that I want us to think about as a nation, and if you feel really strongly about these things, then I would really encourage you to get involved. The first is, I hope that we adapt healthcare to manage their needs. That's like one of our biggest concerns, is that there will be healthcare available. There's already a lot of companies basically coming in and basically saying in a situation where it's deemed, or it's medically necessary, or and they have their priorities, of course, that they'll actually pay for travel to states that will allow choice. So states are already stepping up to make sure that people have the resources that they need if they run into this circumstance. So adapt healthcare to manage their needs. Make adoption within reach for families who would like to adopt. Right now, adoption is financially not even feasible for a lot of families. So if we're going to move forward in this, and this happens with a lot of things that we take, like this is really important, we need to fight for it. Well, then it happens and we don't actually have any of the infrastructure set up so that actually could be successful. So if this is going to be successful, one of the things you have to think about is, if it's not going to be a choice for some people and they're going to have to take a birth to full term, that there are some things in place. One of those things is that adoption is financially feasible, that maybe there's some federal funding for some of that, or some state funding for that, that there's funds added to social and mental health programs that may be needed to manage the current change. What about some of those people that have either gone through a trauma, or they're very young, or their family requires that they don't do this. And so now they're going to have to take a baby to term, and that wasn't their original plan. Maybe they don't live somewhere that's going to allow those kind of resources. So, there's got to be some funds available for the mental health that happens during that time period, for, maybe a non-wed mother's kind of housing situation, so that we take away that stigmatism of having a child out of wedlock, that there's some additional things on that, that families, especially those families that feel really passionate about this, that those families are willing to foster children that are born due to this change. Let's face it, if these circumstances change and then there's going to be children born that maybe wouldn't have been born otherwise, they may be born into circumstances that are not healthy, that are not happy, that are circumstances that do put them at risk. So if you're a family or a person who feels really strongly about this, then the other side of that you have to consider is that maybe you need to be somebody that gets more involved in these families' lives, and you are willing to foster children who are put in these circumstances so they don't grow up in circumstances that they weren't wanted. Research resolutions to male and female birth control, giving responsibility and choice to both. I've never understood, with all the money that we put into research for all kinds of things, why we don't research more. Right now, other than a condom, it really is the requirement of the woman, and it's all her responsibility. I've got a passel full of brothers. I would like for them to be able to make a choice. I would like for them to be able to take on some birth control that allows them to have a choice, so they don't have a bunch of circumstances out there of unwanted pregnancies that they didn't plan. So these little darlings who, should have been a very valuable and important part of your life, that you get to choose when they get to become a part of your life. Men don't really get that choice right now. If a man and a woman choose not to use a condom, that man has to totally trust that woman is taking responsibility for birth control. That's not only not fair to the woman, but it's also not fair to the man. And I really wish there'd be some more money put into research so that both parties have as much responsibility as possible and can fairly distribute that responsibility, so then maybe we're at least less likely to have as many unwanted pregnancies. Educate young people on abstinence and safe sex. With my history, I can just tell you that one of the reasons that I got into the marriage that I did get into, my first marriage that didn't last, was because we had started to become intimate. So I automatically, I have to marry you. Because abstinence was really taught as you're abstinent, and then when you're not abstinent, then you need to marry that person. Of course, here I am 30-something years later, and I think very differently about all of that. But that's not something, the church has not done a great job about training our children on, okay, yes, let's teach abstinence. I believe very strongly in abstinence. But I also believe in educating our youth to understand, if you're not going to choose abstinence, I want you to know what those other options are. One is to have the child, of course, and to go through the process of surrogacy or adoption. The second choice is to understand that you could have that child and what kind of resources might be available to you. And the reason that this is all really getting brought up is because then that third choice is for people of pro-choice. They want you to have that opportunity to say, I'm 16, now is not the time that I want to start this time period of my life, or maybe I'm dating somebody who I know is abusive and I'm trying to get out of that relationship. The amount of trauma that can be around pregnancy can be so vast that I'm not going to even attempt to go through every single thing that I can think of that would cause somebody to want to consider ending a pregnancy. But one thing I want for us to understand is that if you don't start to educate young people, and when I say young people, I mean people up into their 30s and 40s, a lot of times people use abortion and things like that as a form of birth control. That's not acceptable either. When that pendulum swings, it doesn't need to be so far to one way or the other that we can't have just some real common sense and some answers. But education really becomes a part of that. removing that stigmatism and really educating our youth, educating them about responsibility, educating them about what that looks like long term. I mean, they should just have a few divorced families come in and talk about what it looks like to pay child support, what it looks like to share your time with your children, what it looks like to have step families, what it looks like to have other people raising your children, what it looks like to not be able to pull your life together and to lose your rights to your children. I mean, goodness, there's just so many opportunities for education in there. But I just really feel like that's really important. Get involved in the current states that you live in making rules and laws that have common sense and rights for all. You know, so often one of the things that we do is we really talk about things that we disagree with, things that our state or that our federal government does that we can't stand or that we don't like. But ultimately, are you getting involved? Are you advocating for things that you feel like are some common sense solutions, that are some really great opportunities for really figuring out what works? I just really love to see people, if you really want a voice, get involved in the things that actually matter. Advocate for the things that you feel are important. And listen to the other side. You know, keep in mind that I think there's so much misinformation as far as each side. Find some place in the middle. Both sides can have rights. Both sides can kind of have what they want. And I think there is some middle ground in there. So take some responsibility to advocate if you feel so strongly about that piece. Above all, be kind if someone doesn't think like you. There's no reason to destroy someone for their passionate views. We are all coming at this hot issue with our own history and reasons for our choices. And for those of you who know me, you know that I never believe in ruining a friendship, a family, relationship, or any of those things over a disagreement on politics or hot issues. I think it's so important to understand that people take a stand because of how they feel personally within their own heart. And that's never wrong. And those things evolve for people over the years. I feel very differently about things now than I did, 35 years ago, 40 years ago. 40 years ago, I would stand outside of, local bars and I would just be praying for the people inside because I felt like they were losing their salvation because I came from such a right wing, right? Well, now I am one of the people that can be in that bar and I don't have any guilt or shame about that. And I realize that I can have a relationship with God in this beautiful circumstance, and I can be a good person and all those things, and I can still go into a bar and have a drink. Your life evolves, your life changes, your opinions change based on your history. Maybe you're somebody who hasn't been able to carry a baby, so how you felt about abortion may be very, very different now that you've gone through all kinds of tests and in vitro and whatever, and so now you feel very differently about the sanctity of life. I just know so many people's circumstances and why they would feel differently now than they felt ever before. So keep in mind that you may feel really strongly. You may feel like your opinion is the one and only opinion, but just really be open to the fact that someone else's opinion is for the reason that it's for, and that you can't control their history. You can't control what makes them think. And I always just have to open myself up and just go, God, give me some good direction. I want to be kind and good to people. I want to cause no shame on other people. At the same time, I want to do what's right. And I think when you open yourself up to that, you will have your own answers, and only you can live by those answers. I can't expect for anyone to live by the same answers that I live by. Their relationship is different. Their history is different. What God is going to expect of them is different. When we fight for an overall change, we should consider the fallout of that change. There is really no true winner here. My heart is broken for those that feel like their rights were taken away from them, and my heart celebrates with those that feel like they won the rights of the children, but ultimately, my heart is broken a little bit for them too, because within that win, they caused around our nation a lot of devastation. And so ultimately there's some education, there's some picking women up, there's some forgiveness, there's some proving that state by state, we're going to come up with some common sense ideas and some common sense rules that actually make sense to us as a nation. There's not really a winner here. It is up to all of us to love. You can agree with both sides. I hear you. I see you. Please stop attacking one another. Please stop feeling like your opinion is the only opinion that is right. So many people have so much information inside of them, so much history, they've done so much research, or they have so much personal experience with something that you cannot put your opinion on somebody else like that. Look inside of yourself for your answers and for your truth, and that's what you have to live by. I hear you. I see you, friends. And I understand both sides. Hooked on Sunshine, trying to delicately talk about something that I know is such a hot issue, but ultimately just trying to bring love and kindness back into that conversation, where we understand that they are our friends, they are our sisters, they are our brothers. Please don't destroy people over disagreeing on something. Hooked on Sunshine. Have a good day.